In the age where technology progresses at the light of speed, the boundary between the virtual and real world blurs. And this can present new ethical dilemmas at every turn. We need to teach our students AI ethics so they can become the guardians of this new world. We want to ensure that technology is used responsibly. So, in this video, you're going to learn a little bit about how we can be guardians of AI ethics. Hello, I'm Lori Guion. I'm the lead coordinator for instructional technology programs at WSWHE BOCES, which is located in upstate New York. I'm also on the NICE board as the Capital Region Director, and I do training with them. I'm an adjunct professor with Manhattanville College. I'm an author of the book Smile Learning, Leveraging the Power of Educational Technology, where we take a look at when, why, and how to use technology appropriately in the classroom. I have a podcast called Smile Factor that I do with my good friend, Matthew X. Joseph, and I'm a speaker. So, what I want to do is take a little time to just discuss different quotes, and then we're going to break down each of these quotes as we go through to really think about how we can make sure that we're thinking about artificial intelligence and the ethical implications of using this in a really good way. So, there's three quotes. I want you to think to yourself which one resonates with you the most. The first one is, "If we marry educational technology with quality, enriching content, that's a circle of win." That's from LeVar Burton. The second one is from Bill Watterson, who is the cartoonist for Calvin and Hobbes. And he says, "All this modern technology is just making people try to do everything at once." And the third is from Malala, and she says, "Every girl deserves to take part in creating the technology that will change our world and change who runs it." Now, as we dive into artificial intelligence and ethics, I really want us to make sure that we have a foundation in some of the same vocabulary. And the first one I want to kind of mention is social emotional learning. And the reason I want to mention this is because if we're thinking about using AI in the classroom, and that's really what we're going to be exploring here, we want to make sure that all the activities we do are working on some of these social emotional skills. Every study that's been done shows that if you use social emotional learning in your classroom, if you teach these skills to your students, they are going to perform better in four major areas. Their skills are going to be better, their ability to understand material will be better, their mental health will be better, and it will also help with your school culture. So why not make sure that everything that you do in the classroom has some foundation in social emotional learning? So I have some definitions on the screen here. I'm going to read through them really quick, but if you want to pause the video and really take some time, I recommend that you go out to Castle Learning and take a look at these even deeper. But if you are familiar, just these on the screen are just going to help you have that foundation. So SEL is broken down into self-awareness. This includes identity, bias, values, linguistic, and cultural assets. This one's going to be very important when we're looking at AI. Self-management, looking at self-management for achieving collective goals and agency. Social awareness is the focus on institution, environmental norms, and demands to understand social situations and individual actions. Relationships is using and navigating relationships through or within various cultural and institutional demands with a focus on helping the collective. And then responsible decision making, explicit use of critical thinking, viewing decisions from multiple angles, and reflecting on personal role for promoting self and others. Again, really important when we're looking at ethics. So we're really going to also break down universal design for learning. And really, universal design for learning talks about the why, the what, and the how, the multiple means of all of the different ways that we can make sure that we're supporting our students where they are based on who they are and allowing them to reflect and work and showcase their learning in their ways that work best for them. So first is thinking about the why, which has to do with motivation and choice. Why are they going to be engaged in whatever it is you want to teach them? We want to make sure that as we're putting together our lessons and we're thinking about good pedagogy, that we maintain or we engage students to make sure that they feel comfortable to learn the material that we want them to learn. When we're talking about the what, we're talking about representation. Students should see themselves in the work that you're showcasing, and so that they feel more engaged. We also want to make sure that we're opening up the world around them to make sure that they understand that there's more than just what they're used to seeing. And then finally, we want to think about the how, and this is really that showcasing of learning. All right, so we've talked about SEL real quick. We talked about UDL, Universal Design for Learning. If you're unfamiliar with those, I highly suggest you take a look at more material around those two topics as we dive into artificial intelligence. So let's come back to that first quote by Mr. Burton here. And he says, if we marry educational technology with quality, enriching content, that's a circle of win. So I'm going to play a video for you in just a moment. This video comes from Google's Lab Sessions, and it's a great video that shows what AI could look like when it's actually tied to different content, when it's tied to art, the arts, really, music and dance and that sort of thing. Well, actually, I'm not going to show you the recording right now, but I'm going to make sure that it's linked for you. I just realized I don't want to show a video inside a video for copyright reasons, but I want to make sure you have that link. So it is Google Lab Sessions, Human Imagination times Artificial Intelligence. If I'm going to be ethical, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in the most appropriate way. So we'll make sure that you have that link. All right, so let's talk about AI integration. So here's the prompt that I gave to AI tool. This one I used was Gemini, but you can use ChatGPT or anyone that you'd like to use. And the prompt was, give me 3 ways to use AI to cover content in the classroom. And these are the 3 reasons that came up for artificial intelligence integration. The first being personalized learning. We know that if we want it to be representative, we may need to personalize that information. It can be used for interactions, so how we collaborate, how we communicate, that sort of thing, and then for content generation, so we don't have to come up with everything on our own. So I asked Gemini to create a chatbot for me that I could run through as I was thinking about what I want for a quality lesson. So remember, I'm not looking for social emotional learning. I'm looking for universal design for learning. If I'm looking at those 2 things, I'm absolutely thinking about culturally responsive strategies. I'm also, because I'm in New York, I also asked it to think about our computer science and digital fluency standards. So I asked it to create a chatbot that I could run lessons through. And the idea was I wanted it to create lessons based on the subject, the grade, the lesson objective, and then I wanted it to take into consideration student background, their reading level, that uses UDL, SEL, culturally responsive sustained education framework, and which we have in New York, and the computer science and digital fluency standards. Right off the bat, you'll see that I highlighted the word kinesthetic learners. Now, if you've done any research recently, you'll know that we used to talk about learning styles and that there were different ways that are different styles that people learned best. And that research has been debunked. So we don't want to focus on learning styles. People can prefer things. You might prefer to watch a video like you are now over reading something. That is a preference, but it doesn't mean it's your best learning style. So right away, Gemini hit something wrong that I didn't care for, that I was like, can't really use that if we're focusing on kinesthetic learners. I have to think about that. Then what I did is I took that same prompt and I asked it in Latimer. Latimer is a website that focuses on Black culture and history. I wanted to see what it would do with making sure that we had ethical AI practices. And you'll see that I highlighted a few things, so you don't have to read everything on your screen. But I asked it to create this assistant. You'll see that it has that information on top. The prompt I gave, that it was English, kindergarten, students will identify and name upper and lowercase letters, fostering a love for language and appreciation for diverse writing forms. Immediately, it mentioned learning styles. It didn't really get into it, so it wasn't so bad, but just know that it mentioned it. And then I liked in green, you'll see it said choose activities that interest them the most, offering multiple means of engagement. The UDL strategies were beautiful. With the social emotional learning, it said to foster love for language by creating a supportive, inclusive classroom. Again, great social emotional tie-in. It even mentions self-awareness and self-expression, which ones it was going to tie in. Fabulous. And then the last one was culturally responsive practices, celebrating diverse written forms by introducing students to literature and text from various cultures and backgrounds. Beautifully written. And then for the computer science and digital fluency standards, it kind of fell off the wagon there because it just says use tech tools, but it doesn't really tell you the effective way to use them. So from there, I would say that we want to make sure that we're looking for whether or not it has good content. So I put that same thing through Gemini, and this is what with the same prompt, that letter writing one for students. But I asked it to remix it to focus on indigenous populations native to New York. And the reason I did that is because, again, I'm in New York and I wanted to bring it into the history. So immediately it said great stuff with CRS. It said integrate traditional wampum bell patterns or petroglyph symbols alongside the English alphabet. So we're going to make sure that we have these multiple means of representation in there. But then again, it mentioned learning styles and auditory learners. And it did have a really good idea where it said collaborate with local museums and cultural centers affiliated with Iroquois and Algonquin communities to learn more about appropriate ways to integrate Indigenous knowledge and ensure respect for traditions. Love that, right? That's great. We're going to bring in culture from people from that culture. We're going to use those local organizations to support us. We're also bringing the real world into our classroom, which is fabulous. But then it gave me three enrichment activities that were all, I questioned whether or not they were appropriation, right? And if you're not sure what it is, I put a definition on the screen for you here. But it mentioned using wampum belt creations to create letters. It mentioned a nature symbol hunt. It mentioned Play-Doh as a great way to encourage students to create letters and symbols inspired by the Iroquois and Algonquin petroglyphs. And if you don't have a really good background in this information, without bringing in those cultural centers, you could be appropriating, and you want to make sure of that. And I asked it that, and I said, "Are these lessons culturally responsive?" And I asked if it was appropriation, and immediately it said, "Yeah." Some of these could be considered disrespectful. It could be considered appropriation without proper guidance. Creating simplified versions of sacred symbols could be disrespectful. Using inauthentic or stereotypical representations in your storytelling could be appropriation. So while it offered these, it didn't give me good quality ones that we would feel comfortable using. And then it gave me some better ones that are much better. And again, pause if you want to read through it. They'll be in your resources as well. But here we have to consider that if we're using AI to create our lessons, and we want to be good guardians of AI ethics, we have to think about these ethical considerations. We have to give some time to really break down what it's offering and think about it from these different point of views. So we know that these lessons may not be appropriate. There are some ethical concerns here. So I ran it through Magic School as well, and it actually did fairly well. It gave me the UDL strategies through engagement and representation, action and expression. And Magic School is one that we know that a lot of districts are using. It gave me some SEL strategies. It gave me some culture responsive practices. It mentioned include letters and words from home languages, celebrate with stories and songs that feature letters of different cultures, use visuals, which I thought was pretty good, right? It seemed like it was really good material for us. And then I tried it through Your Way, and Your Way is another AI platform that allows for differentiation. So I was curious how it would do a differentiation, and it did okay. And again, you can take a peek and take a look at what it offered when you're going through the materials. It did pretty good with it. It still wasn't all inclusive in what I wanted it to be in the way I was planning to make this lesson. So the point being, with all of that I just went through with you, is that the human portion, you going through the information, is so much greater than the AI. The human involvement, you having an impact on the lesson creation, is much more important than the AI that you use. That's how you can be a good guardian of AI ethics. So I want to show you another one, and this one is called TeachAid. And TeachAid is one that I've worked very closely with to try to build a lesson builder where I knew that it was going to make sure to hit the things that I asked it to do. But even before I asked it, or I worked with the company to kind of cultivate what I wanted the results to be, right in the way they describe it for the districts, it mentions Indigenous culture responsive and localized curriculum and pedagogy. It pulls from great information. It mentions pedagogy and professional learning implementation. So it's going to use professional learning frameworks. That's your UDL, right? It's going to have universal design for learning in it. It mentions tier 2 and tier 3 instruction and IEP. So we're going to make sure we have that individualized education. We're making sure that we're personalized the learning for our students. And then it mentions the teacher effectiveness and efficiency. So it's going to give you a comprehensive lesson plan that's going to make sure that it doesn't mention learning styles. It might say preferences, but it's not going to say styles. It's going to make sure that it's based on the universal design for learning platforms. It's going to make sure that it has social emotional learning tied into the lessons. So it helps us frame AI in the right way. Again, still recommend you go through it. But let's play a game for a minute. We're going to do a quick would you rather and consider AI and the ethics around it. So the first one here is a self-driving car encounters people crossing the street. And I want you to think about whether or not you think a self-driving car should prioritize the people or prioritize the smooth traffic flow. Don't look at the pictures yet. We'll look at those in a second. So pause for a moment. Think about whether or not you think a self-driving car should prioritize the people or prioritize that workflow or the traffic flow. Okay. So when we're thinking about it, and hopefully you have your thought, and there's no right or wrong answer here. If it prioritizes people, traffic could happen, right? We know that that cars could get backed up if every time somebody comes to the edge of the sidewalk, it stops to let the people through. But if you prioritize smooth traffic, you might have people really grouping up on that curb waiting to go for a long time. Okay, now let's take a look at the prompts. Now, I use Microsoft Designer for this. I wanted to showcase different tools, so you'll see different ones throughout this presentation. This first one, I asked for diverse people walking in a crosswalk in front of self-driving car waiting to go in a photograph. So you can see it does pretty well, although it puts a lot of sidewalk around this one car, but it did an okay job. I asked it again to do the self-driving car stopping with diverse elderly people waiting on the sidewalk in a photographic style, and immediately gave me an image of a very stereotypical group of older people. So we again have to consider when we're using images on top of anything that we're doing when we're generating content for our classroom, what kind of images that it's generating. So how might choice reflect potential biases in AI programming, right? When we're thinking about something along those lines. Here's a second one for you. A social media platform uses AI to personalize news feeds for its users. Should it prioritize user beliefs, or should it prioritize a balanced mix of viewpoints? All right, these were Canva, Magic Media. They're fine, other than when I asked it to create these diverse images for photography, right? Viewpoints. When I use the word viewpoints, you can see a lot of them are pretty similar here. But we know that if we do prioritize user beliefs, we might start getting some bias, right? They're never going to see the other sides of an issue. If we prioritize a balanced mix of viewpoints, we can sometimes make our own choices, or we can rely on the experts that might have more information based on that information. If you prioritize those beliefs, we know that there may be limited exposure. There could be misinformation. We could have some algorithmic bias. These are things that we want to teach our students. We want to make sure that they can look at fact versus fiction. They can figure out what they're seeing online. Does it make sense? And this one concerns me too. Surveillance capitalism, where all of a sudden, based on how we look and our views, all of a sudden people are going to, or companies are going to start making money based on our views. So we want to make sure that we're not targeting our advertising and getting propaganda, that we're not reinforcing biases and so on. So how does this look in the classroom? So I'm going to share a couple different resources with you that I think are really helpful. The first one is called The Most Likely Machine. It's from the Artifact Group. And I've used this with middle school and high school. You probably can go down to about 4th and 5th grade. What I would be concerned about here with Most Likely Machine is that it uses 9 famous people. Make sure your students know who they are. It goes through what are algorithms. It explains how they're used. And then what it does is it has the students pick which of the famous people would most likely get a superlative in a yearbook, and then it goes through and explains how bias works and why it matters. Another great one that you can take a look at is there's a program called The Mirror. And what this student here is doing, I'm not going to play the video for you, but what this student here is doing is she's responding to what she wished that adults knew about how she uses AI. And what it does, and this is The Mirror right here, it's by Swivel. What it does is it pulls information based on what she said, and it offers student feedback. And it told this student right away that they had a positive perspective, they were thoughtful, and then it gives some suggestions. Focus on how you can learn and explore how it can help you. It focuses in on our social emotional standards or social emotional framework based around social awareness and responsible decision making in her responses. Other students that went through the same process were able to get different feedback here as well. Some other resources that will be shared for you are some different things that I've done with students and with different groups of educators. So I'll share these resources at the end for you. School AI is another great one where you can have your students explore what AI is and consider around ethics, bias, and accessibility. In this case, the students were given a prompt. They were asked, it was a fifth grade math class, and they were learning about when to use AI to help them with their math homework. And some of the responses you'll see on the right here are the AI responses based on what the students actually said. So I whited out their names, but it gives you an idea as far as how the students responded, the information that AI was giving to the teacher on how they felt about it. And it really can help the teachers focus in and personalize the learning for the students. All right, the second quote is from Bill Watterson. He's the cartoonist for Calvin and Hobbes, and he said, "All this modern technology just makes people try to do everything at once." Let's dive into that. I did throw this into Canva to see what it would do, and I wrote a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon style image of a boy and a tiger wearing headphones next to a robot, and this is what it gave me. Okay, so a couple of resources that I think would be really great to teach about this. We know that there's a rise of large AI models. This information is beautiful. If you've never gone out to that website, it has some really great resources so students can take a look at data and see the overwhelming information that's out there. And then we know that AI is actually increasing or be getting better than human performance at benchmarks. So we know that reading comprehension, image recognition, language understanding, handwriting recognition, speech recognition, and predictive reasoning is getting so good with AI. And we can talk about that with our students. What are the concerns? Another great resource for you is through Sphero. Sphero has a Bolt, and now they have a Bolt Plus actually, where you can take a look at different cybersecurity lessons that were all developed by a professor by the name of Pauline Mosley. She's from I think Pace University. If you go out to Sphero, if you just Google Sphero cybersecurity, you'll find this information. But they did a survey of fourth through eighth grade students from the Center of Cyber Safety and Education and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And they asked some information. You can see the percentages here, who connected with strangers online, who gave their number to strangers online, how many students tried to meet somebody they met online in person. And then you can see this large percentage of children that were victims were girls. So we know that there's so much information online. We need to help our students understand it. We also have to think about all the headlines that are coming up, right? So we know that it's really prolific right now. There's so much information that is out there about artificial intelligence. And then if you think of everything you need to cover in your class daily, from your content, from social emotional learning through, the personalized needs, plus all the emerging technologies, there's just so much that we're required to do in the classroom that it does seem like what Bill Watterson said is true, that there's just too much happening at once. So here's my recommendation. If you're going to tackle all of this at once, think about interdisciplinary teaching, especially around when you're using AI. Does it help you narrow that focus and create those interdisciplinary opportunities? Identify your theme or your learning objective. Really, you can start with your standard. What is the standard that you need your students to meet? And then how can you align it to what you want to do in the classroom or what your students need to be successful? And how can you make sure that whatever tools you're using, that they're accessible? I know at our BOCES, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion. We call it WIDE, which is Wellness, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Initiative. We incorporate diverse voices and stories. We offer opportunities to explore our identities and biases, and we foster a culture of inclusivity. Your district may have something along these lines too that would be worth you bringing into your class. Okay, and the final quote is from Malala. She said, "Every girl deserves to take part in creating technology that will change our world and change who runs it." So let's see what artificial intelligence can look like in action. The images you're seeing on your screen are from one particular school where the students were exploring artificial intelligence. The top one is a little video of students that were doing a dance, an algorithm dance that was put together, and we talked about how algorithms work. Another is a bunch of stations that we had elementary school students doing to explore AI. And then the final one that's kind of squished here was a student who was using Osmo, which which uses reflective AI to do some basic coding activities. This is a pre-reading activity where the student could try to figure it out on their own, where they have the opportunity to play and explore AI. Also, what you see on your screen here is a Turing Tumble. Turing Tumble is through Upper Story. Turing Tumbles, what they do is it's a marble-based computer where the students have to place all of these little green switches and dials to be able to get the marbles to go from the top to the bottom in the order that you request it to. It comes with a whole bunch of online resources that you can go to. If you go to Upper Story, you'll find that information, or if you buy the physical copy, there's a book with lots of different puzzles for students to do that really teach how computers work and how AI works. If you want to take it unplugged, you could do something like this building road activity that we have for students. This is just where the students have to put the pieces in the right order, and then they drive this little truck. It's like a little pullback truck. No batteries or anything like that. It's just a pull, and then it goes through with the gears, and they have to try to get the truck to the place to dump the marbles into the little dumping station. With your older students, you can play the traffic jam game or rush hour game. This one's from Think Fun. We've used the online version, or you can do it as the physical game. And the idea is the students have to solve the puzzle to get the red truck out or the red car out. Great way to teach how GPS works, how AI decides the best way to go through traffic, anything along those lines. I mentioned Sphero earlier. Sphero also is an indie. You can teach how autonomous vehicles work with these simple maths and offline coding. Really great for students to explore and figure out how, again, autonomous vehicles work. You can use this to also talk about literacy and all sorts of really great activities that kind of help your students understand AI and computers for that matter. There's some other resources that are going to be shared with you. ProSolve has a full program. This one happens to be Glitch, but they have 2 other seasons of it where it's a full program for your students to explore artificial intelligence, problem solving, communication, really focusing in on the human intelligence side. And there's a few activities that I have for you that are AI that you can do during PD that will be shared with you. Some other resources that'll be shared with you are some different ways to do inventive and creative collaborations where you can bring the outside world into your classroom. I mentioned the human intelligence movement earlier, or human intelligence is part of ProSolve. They also have a group you can join called Human Intelligence Movement. Digital Promise has some great resources as far as AI and education as well. So what do you need to be an AI guardian of ethics? Well, really, you have to think about what it is you have to do, right? The knowledge, your frameworks, the tech integration standards, those are the things that are necessary in our classroom. And within that, we also have to think about SEL, UDL, right? That's your frameworks that we're thinking about. And you want to add to that your critical thinking, problem solving, communication, digital literacy, and your pedagogical skills. These are what is important for students to have in order to be able to discern what it is they see, to make sure that they are ethical in everything that they do. These are also the top skills that the World Economic Forum has identified as what the workforce needs in order for them to consider being successful. So what are you going to do? You're going to stay informed. You're going to make that ethical commitment. Make sure that you keep all of the activities you do student-centered, collaborate with your class, with each other, and then if you can at a global level as well. Model that ethical behavior, be open with your students about what you use and how you use AI, foster that critical thinking, and definitely promote digital citizenship. So this scan code is going to give you all of our resources that I talked about. So make sure that you grab that QR code on your screen so you have access to all of the information that I showed in this video. Thank you for watching.